Welcome back to the Real Life Theology Podcast. We are featuring breakout sessions from the 2025 Renew Gathering. Today's episode will help us understand how structured internships and residencies can develop effective leaders for new church plants, ensuring sustainable growth within church communities.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for coming to our workshop on internships and residencies. My name is Sean Cronin. I'm the training lead at Passion for Planting. If you've probably never heard of Passion for Planting, but it's the church planting ministry of New Life Christian Church in the Washington, D.C. area. So the church started with a vision to be a church planting church. They didn't know exactly how they were going to do it. They just said, hey, we want to not just start our church, but we want to be a church that starts churches, that starts churches, that starts churches. And about 20 years ago, they started this thing called Passion for Planting to kind of formalize what we were doing, come alongside of church planters and networks and to help them start churches. And Patrick Ferguson was actually one of the first members of the Passion for Planting staff doing project management for church planters. That's basically like having a part-time executive minister while you're getting something up and running. Having someone in your back pocket is always really helpful. So Pat started there. Patrick's played many different roles at New Life and Passion for Planting. He's now our campus pastor at one of our campuses in the DC area. He's going to talk more about internships and what we do for interns at New Life. And then I'm going to talk about residencies because I am the training lead for our Passion for Planting, church planting ministry. And so we do residencies for church planters. So let me start us off with a word of prayer. And then we'll dive in. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today and this awesome time to be together, to worship you, to seek your voice, seek your guidance in our lives and our ministries. And we ask, God, that in this workshop that you would help us to think about maybe questions that we're wrestling with and ways that we can encourage one another and find answers and hear your voice a little more clearly. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. So my plan is to talk a little bit about the why of leadership development and why we need to pour into young leaders through internships and residencies. Hand it off to Pat for internship stuff. I'll talk about our church planting residency, and then we should leave time at the end for questions. So feel free if you've got questions. Feel free to put up your hand, but also know we should have time at the end as well. So be writing down any questions that you have. So in 2015, we started a residency program thinking, okay, if we're going to plant churches, we need leaders to plant them. That's one of the main ingredient. Okay, if you need someone who's called to plant a church, and you also need to make sure that they're trained up, they're equipped, and they're ready to answer this call that God has placed upon their hearts. So we knew that the need was great. Some of the most recent research that I've seen in terms of churches opening and churches closing in the United States, I was seeing about 3,000 churches like ours starting every year, but also about 4,500 closing every year. So losing about 1,500 churches every year. That's all happening while the population of the United States continues to grow and increase. And so if we just kind of did just a little ratio scenario game, if we wanted to keep the ratio of one church for 1,000 people like it has been in the next 40 years, 50 years, we're going to need to net about 1,900 churches, and at the current rate, we're losing 1,500. So that means, we need to plant 64,000 or 6,400 churches every year just to keep up with the population growth. So that means we need to develop leaders to be able to plant these churches. And unfortunately, I've saw it in the video in the last session. There are fewer leaders that are kind of going into vocational ministry, at least being trained for vocational ministry in our Bible college and in our schools. Just the other day, I got a postcard from Central Christian College of the Bible, which was like, I went to Ozark Christian College, and Central was like one of our rivals. So I'm like, why are they sending me? But I get this postcard. They're like, we just want to make sure our alumni information is correct. I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't go to your school. But because I went to Cincinnati for seminary, like they came underneath Central. So now I'm like an alumni of Central, which I don't love. But it just reminded me, oh yeah, like our Bible colleges and seminaries, unfortunately, a lot of them are closing down, like Florida Christian and St. Louis and Cincinnati. So we're not seeing as many leaders being trained through, these schools, which were oftentimes the way that we would train up leaders. The traditional pipelines are shrinking. And so what do we do? What's one of the solutions? It's to raise them up within your own church and give them opportunities to lead. I think about Patrick Ferguson. He was a guy that was going to Virginia Tech, going to be an engineer, but he heard about this new church plant getting started, and he said, I want in. And God directed his path to New Life, and Brett poured into him and gave him opportunities to serve, even when he probably wasn't ready. And people made Brett know about it, but Brett said, no, this is how we're going to train him up. And Pat's become an incredible leader at New Life. And I know I'm working with a young guy right now in ministry, and he didn't go the traditional Bible college route, went to college for music, for just music at a secular school. Then he became a financial advisor because that's what his dad's business was. But then he felt called to go into ministry. So he went to seminary, and he's got the theological education, but now he's in ministry, and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And unfortunately, he never had an opportunity to even do an internship. And so a lot of the church's leadership is like, dude, we threw you into the water, like to the deep end, and you've never had any experience at a growing church, a thriving church, to see different ways to do ministry. And I'm like, man, it would be so beneficial if this young man had an opportunity to at least do an internship and sit underneath some other leaders who are doing it pretty effectively. And so I'm going to ask Pat to come up and talk about how we do internships at New Life.
Great. I'm going to share multiple things. One, I'll just amen to everything that Sean said, including I was not ready to do what Brett asked me to do. He asked me to lead our very first small group before we even launched, and I had never done anything remotely like that, and did that for a couple of years, so you would think I would have it down. And we hired our first full-time associate minister, came to my small group, went back to Brett and said, what in the world? Why are you letting this guy do this? But so often we learn through experience. We learn by doing. We learn when we are dependent upon God, and we have to go to God and say, God, help me do this. What Sean just shared is a great launching point for like a philosophy of internships and residencies should not be free labor. That sounds obvious, and we all want to laugh at that, but it's true. This is about investing in the future. How do we equip, inspire, encourage? How do we send off young leaders to do the ministry that is ahead of us? In that context, that kind of shapes a lot of what we do at New Life Christian Church and our internship programs. And I'll say, there are a lot of people who may be farther ahead in us in this and learn from lots of people, but we just feel like that investment in the person is the most important part, and that shapes a lot. And that begins with, where do we recruit interns? Mostly relationally, mostly through people who we have hired, and they have networks of people. We have about, I don't know where it is right now. It's been a while since I've done the math, but we're typically slightly less than half of our staff has come from the Bible college or seminary route, and the other half has been hired internally or out of marketplace. But the people who have come from colleges, we maintain those relationships. We go back to those colleges. We do college trips. Sometimes we've gone to 3 colleges in one semester to find interns for the summer. Sometimes we found, okay, this college is really hot right now. We want to go there, see who they have. We develop relationships with the administration and the professors at the college, and they send us references for who they would want to see participate in our program. We do post stuff online as well. And former interns are often our best leads because if we provide them a great experience, they want to tell their friends and the people who might be a year or 2 behind them. So we get a lot of leads that way. And then the question is, okay, so what do we do when we get them? And we do multiple things. One of the things is just trying to position them in the right place. We don't have a strict, okay, we have this youth ministry intern, this children's ministry intern, this outreach intern, whatever. We want to talk to the person, find out where their heart is, where their strengths are, and how we can set them up for what they feel like God is calling them to next, which might mean, okay, we put them in student ministry, and that's all they do. All they do is work with middle schoolers and high schoolers. And of course, the other duties as assigned, but we want their primary best time in that ministry. Other times, they're not sure. They don't know. They just want to see, how a different church than the one they grew up in does stuff. And we might have them spend, a month in children's, a month in youth, a month in outreach, a month in sports, or whatever, something like that. They may move around a lot depending on how long they're going to be with us. In fact, let me give just a real quick New Life's definitions, not to be confused with Universal. Interns for us tend to be 3 months over the summer between semesters, something like that. They're unpaid. I'll get to that in just a minute. They're still in school, and we allow them to work within ministries. Residents for us tend to be graduates who are leading a ministry, and that is a paid position. And we have a minimum of 9 months for that. We really like to have people for a year. Now, to be honest, if they're 2 months in and it's clear to everybody this is just a bad fit, we would rather get them where God wants them to be than to force we all committed to a year. We have to stay with a year. So we kind of split up interns and residencies within the church side of things in that way, and that works real well for us.
What was your term for how long you did residencies? Did you say how long?
At least 9 months.
9 months, okay.
Yeah. We find if we want them to own something, they have to have time to build it, grow it, develop leaders, have a little bit of a track record for actually running something, as opposed to just working in something. And you can't do that in 3 to 6 months. Right. It's not long enough. I mean, I could argue a year is not long enough, but yeah.
It sounds like you kind of start with the person and kind of custom make the path for them a little bit, or kind of decide based on where.
Yes, and we have some commonalities within all of them I will get to, yes.
You have a common core that you kind of keep coming back to.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
And when you said leading a ministry, are they in leadership of that ministry, or do you is there somebody that's paid in that position full time that steps down?
There's always someone who's paid who is overseeing them.
Okay.
But there's a difference between I'm the youth minister and I'm going to tell you to do this, and now I'm going to tell you to do that, and I'm going to let you lead this group, and saying, you know what, there's a school we haven't been able to get into. Go see if you can figure out how to get into that school. And I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'll give you some principles and guidance along the way, but you got to figure it out. You've got to grow it and build it.
The whole ministry of youth.
Correct.
Leading big portions, trying to do things.
Correct.
Cool.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, big goal to prepare and equip them for ministry. Let me get to your question, talk about what we do during the internships, regardless of where they are. We give them an intern coach. We have a guy on staff who's really passionate about this. who, even if they're serving exclusively in children's ministry and he's never done children's ministry in his life, he's still kind of their intern coach / handler / coordinator throughout their time with us. And he gathers all the interns together. They go through books and Bible studies together. And some of the books will be personal development, spiritual development. I wish I could say that everyone we got out of a Christian college had a thriving relationship with Christ. We have not found that to be the case. So we work on that, and we have the opportunity to invest in them and help them to learn spiritual disciplines and how to hear and follow the voice of God. And some of the books are more tactical and more ministry or leadership focused. It just depends. But he goes through those, and he will pick the specific books when he finds out who's coming. He's also the recruiter for most of our interns, so he knows who's coming before he gets there. He's interviewed them. We go through almost the same hiring process for two reasons. One, we just want to get to know the interns before they come. We have lower expectations than we would for hiring someone in terms of skills and knowledge. We have the same expectations for character. There's a side note there, but you don't want your intern ending up in a newspaper. So don't lower the expectations for character. Anyway, okay. So the intern coach will do lots of personal investment in them, spiritual and leadership focus. He also provides lots of opportunities for the interns to interact with other staff members and core volunteers. We have a volunteer couple in the church, wonderful couple, who will always cook dinners, and they'll do like 3 or 4 dinners at that couple's house, and they share stories and interact. They hear from volunteer standpoints, things about ministry that they may not have thought of, and they interact with other staff members, and the other staff members share their stories and their challenges and relationally try to invest in them that way. Many of our interns come from traditional churches, and we spend a lot of our time talking about not just this is how we do things, but this is why we do things. This is why we talk a little bit differently about communion, and why we don't assume our people know what it is. So we try to explain what it is, but we also acknowledge there are non-Christians in the audience. There are first-time visitors in the audience every single week. So we have to explain what we're doing and why we're doing. So we try to help them understand the why, so that they don't go home and try to just copy what we do. The last thing we need to do is make them exactly like us, because they're going to go somewhere to a different context. And if they don't understand the whys, then it's hard for them to, they're just going to copy the to-dos instead of the principles. And we want to teach them the principles behind why we do things the way we do. I mentioned we have unpaid internships and paid residencies. The interns, frankly, part of it comes from just my conviction about Fair Labor Standards Act and minimum wage and all of that stuff, that it's I want to stay away from the appearance of paying interns if we're not going to hold strictly to all those things and pay overtime and all that stuff. I still feel like morally we do great because we provide free housing. If you're here, as an intern for 3 months or a resident for 12 months, we're giving you free housing, which also includes some level of food and stuff like that. So I'm not worried about that. It is part of their education, but we leave them with a gift at the end. And we've kind of done some math and said, okay, theoretically, if they're working full time, which they are, and we were going to pay the minimum wage, but then we back off, the housing and whatever. This is a pretty fair price that will bless them as they go, wherever they are next. We kind of set what that bar is depending on how long they are with us. And we say, hey, they were really strong. We bump it up a couple $100. This guy really wasn't doing that great. We bump it down a couple $100. But we use that as a starting point for a gift for them at the end. We have occasionally made an exception and given a mid-internship gift if the person was really struggling and, if they were struggling, but we stay far, far away from giving them a weekly check, a bi-weekly check, or even a monthly check, because now it looks like you are paying them. And if you are paying them, you need to put them in your payroll system, and it's a whole different thing. Residents, we do pay. We're still providing housing, but at that level, with the experience they have, the fact that they're owning ministry, we don't feel bad making sure that we're consistent with Fair Labor Standards Acts and all that stuff. So we're able to do that. There are lots of details. I am happy to address those after. Actually, I didn't put up our email address, but we can give you our email address and everything. I just realized one more thing. Depending on where the people are coming from, if they need additional theological training, we do try to give them additional resources and point them to Renew is the obvious thing. We've got Renew University is just launching, and that's going to be a great tool we're going to use, especially if we get someone from a different faith tradition that may not understand kind of what we're about as a Restoration Movement church. We've got a guy coming in internally from New Life that's going to intern with us this summer. He wants to go into student ministry long term. So we're going to have him do Renew University as part of his training as well. And last thing, you'll talk about the cohort and webinar probably, right? Sure. Okay, great. Cool. Which I put the URL there for.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Pat. But yeah,
I had to leave him time.
That's good stuff. I was actually a resident at New Life. That's how I got my foot in the door, and then kind of got to stay. So, I can't say enough about interns and residents and just the way that they can offer, and especially for me, even like, the internship that I did at another church plant, just opened my eyes up to how you can do ministry in a different context that I wasn't aware of. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about our church planting residency, and hopefully there are some church planters in your midst that you know about that you might not even be thinking about, but maybe some of what we talk about will be like, oh, maybe this person's a church planter. What can we do to help them answer that call to ministry? So I'm going to talk about a few of our interns, a few of our residents who have gone through our residency program. So I said we started this back in 2015. We first, I think, part of the vision was to have all the residents kind of move to Northern Virginia and to be there for about a year and to learn church planting from us. But then we realized that really doesn't make sense. If you're going to plant a church in Boise, Idaho, and you already live there, why would you move your family, uproot your family and maybe connections that you already have or are building from Boise and then move to Northern Virginia for a year and then have to move back and reestablish yourself? So why don't we figure out a way to do a distance residency program where if, it makes sense, if they want to move to Northern Virginia, maybe they're planning a church nearby, they can do like a residency and be on staff at New Life. But most of our residents live in different parts of the country. We've had some residents in different parts of the world. And we go for 9 months from beginning of September to the beginning of June. And then we meet once a week on Wednesdays for a long day of Zoom from about 9 to 3, with a couple breaks between. But they have homework. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then assignments that they're sharing. And we're really helping them clarify the vision for what is it that God's calling them to plant. And so just to help you think about who are these residents. One of our residents was a guy named Mike Fuster. He, didn't grow up in a Christian family, nominally Catholic, go to church maybe every once in a while. Got married, was a salesman selling flooring, got divorced, struggled with substance abuse, ended up in a mental hospital. And then his life, when it was at rock bottom, God found him. God met him. He ended up at New Life and was just hungry. He was just hungry. He said, I need hope. I need something. And he found Jesus. And a campus pastor said, Mike, why don't you come and be my co-leader in my small group? I've been attending small group. Why don't you be my co-leader? So he's a co-leader. Eventually, he becomes a leader of a small group. Eventually, hey, Mike, you're a leader. People follow you. Could you be the leader of our nonprofit, our community-based nonprofit that helps people transition out of homelessness into permanent housing? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, he becomes the leader of that. Then he becomes executive minister. Hey, Mike, you've been leading this small group. You've been leading this community nonprofit. We think you should be our campus pastor. You should be our campus pastor. He becomes a campus pastor. And then his wife and God's stirring something in their heart. They end up moving to Florida. And in that process, Mike's like, I don't know if what God's really calling me to do. Maybe he's calling me to plant a church. And so he joins our residency program. He's in Miami. He's taking it. God's given him some vision for this church plant, and didn't exactly know it, but he ends up planting a church. He's in the midst of planting a church right now. He's an everyday, ordinary person that we discipled and got into ministry. Some residents in our cohort this year, Elisha and Tiasha Poole. They're in the Detroit, Michigan area. But yeah, they did not. Elisha just went to ITT Tech. He works in the auto industry, but he's a young man in his early 30s, and just one day God gave him a vision, said, I'm going to plant you different, made it clear, okay, I'm calling you to be a church planter. But he's like, how do I do that? I don't know what to do to plant a church. So he got connected with a church called 242 Community Church in Michigan, and they said, hey, we want Elisha and Tiasha to go through your residency program. And so we're training them up to be able to plant different, for him to be bivocational, and to plant a church that reaches people in the Ann Arbor area. Another resident, Nick, he just was at a church, helped the church start Elevate Church in Southern California. He met a guy that said, hey, you should come help me plant this church. Nick's like, okay. Like, I work in the restaurant industry. He was a restaurant manager, was a bartender, but he's like, sure, we love Jesus. Jesus radically changed our lives, so we're all in. And they were part of the launch team. And then he keeps being a restaurant manager, keeps bartending, and God says, now it's your time to go and plant. And he calls us up out of nowhere, hey, can I come to your church planting boot camp? Sure, come to our church planting boot camp. He comes to our church planting boot camp, says, I need more. I'm not ready yet. All right, why don't you be part of our residency? So he worked through the residency as a bartender. And some of his first donors, one of his first financial supporters was a guy that he just made drinks for. Said, I got across the bar, was able to talk about this church plant that they were a part of. Just everyday, ordinary people that are feeling the call to plant churches. And they planted Elevate Church in St. George, Utah, and it's growing a lot. We were surprised, but God's doing incredible things through Elevate Church in St. George, Utah. A guy in our residency program this year, another guy is Marcelino Perez. He's from the Phoenix area. Went to school for education, worked in the public schools for a while, and then the church where he was going, where he had come to know Christ, said, hey, we see leadership potential in you. Why don't you become one of our student or small group leaders, eventually a campus pastor, and now he's preparing to plant a church. One more example is Jacob McClarney, who is more of the traditional route. He went to, grew up going to church. He went to Bible college, went to seminary, became a student minister, became a co-pastor at a church in Southern Virginia, and now he's felt called to plant a church. So he says, hey, I want to be part of your residency program. And he's starting to plant house churches all throughout Southern Virginia. And so there's a lot of different kind of shapes and sizes to who these church planters are who participate in our residency program. And I would imagine there could be a church planter that that maybe you're like, oh, but they haven't been to seminary or they haven't been to Bible college. Well, maybe that's not necessary. Maybe there are other ways that we can train them up to go. So let's think about having some I see in you conversations, right? There are some people in your midst that you got to have these I see in you conversations because they don't see it in themselves, right? They see themselves as a flooring salesman, right? They're really good at it. And they're like, no, I just sell stuff, right? Or there's someone that is always starting things in their community. They're always like doing community block parties in their neighborhood, or they're starting small groups at your church. And they're like, no, what are you talking about? I just do those things. You're like, well, I think actually God might be calling you to plant a church. It seems like he's given you the wiring and the experience to be able to do that. And so look for people that have that entrepreneurial bent. Do you know people that are constantly starting new things, whether it's a small group, whether it's a business? They always got a business idea and they're always starting businesses. Maybe they're starting ministries. Maybe they're starting community events. They're always having, parties at their house and people gather. Look for people that are disciple makers, evangelistic. They're reaching their friends, they're discipling other people, and you can see that there are people that they're pouring into, and that's something that they're just doing on their own. Look for people that are humble, teachable. When I working with networks, some of the network leaders say the number one kind of thorn in people, church planters' flesh, the thing that trips them up the most, that Satan takes advantage of the most, is pride. And so some church planters are really prideful, and they think they're doing it because they think they can do it better than everybody else. But then oftentimes we've seen comes back to bite them. So look for people that are humble, that are not looking for the spotlight. And so that's probably why you need to have that I see in your conversation with them, because they're not seeing it themselves. And then people that lead, there are people that are following them. So be looking out for those people, and maybe they should consider being part of a church planting residency to help them figure out their call to ministry and to church planting. Be the one that speaks that courage into that calling for them. And then if you find someone that's like feeling called to plant a church, I would encourage you to, number one, send them to like a formal assessment center where they can be looked at, through the lens of many years of church planting experience. So we run one at Passion for Planting, and a lot of other organizations that are in church planting have other assessment centers that can help them figure out, okay, are you called to this? Do you have the wiring? Do you have the gifting to be able to do this? And what would your next steps be? A lot of times church planters, we say they're drunk on vision. And so if you know someone who's called to plant a church, they probably are really passionate, and they've got these ideas, they got these visions, they're like, nothing's going to stop me. But what we've seen is, unfortunately, oftentimes they just don't know what they don't know. They're kind of like that young couple that comes to you, maybe as you're their pastor, and they come to you and they're like, hey, would you do our wedding? And they're 20 years old, maybe they met at college, and you're like, okay, it seems like you're in love, okay, and it seems like you want to get married. It's not a bad thing, but why don't we do some premarital counseling first? I want to do some premarital counseling. I don't know if you've ever had this conversation with people, but I've had this conversation with people. They're like, why would we need premarital counseling? Like, we're in love. And I'm like, I don't know. I've actually never been married, but I think love's not going to solve all of your problems. I think you could do some good for your marriage if you invest some tools in your marriage toolbox to be able to figure out, hey, are you on the same page about these things? And hey, do you need to learn about communication and how you can do that with one another? And the same thing is true with church planting. There's a lot of church planters that have this very idealistic vision of, okay, this is how it's going to go. And then things don't exactly go that way, and they don't have the tools in their ministry toolbox to be able to figure out, why isn't this working? What should we do here? They don't have the support maybe even around them to be able to navigate those waters. So send those church planters to assessment, and then oftentimes the next step is to send them to some sort of training, like a residency program. So our residency program, I mentioned, is 9 months long. We meet on Zoom once a week. And then we also have 2 on-site intensives where we get together for 4 days at our offices in Northern Virginia. So if you're like, man, how do we do this at ours? Right? This is a cool opportunity for you to invite people and be hospitable. We have members from our church, house them, feed them, get to know them, encourage them, say we're behind you as you're one of your sending churches. And we take them on field trips to church plants in the area. We have some of our leaders, staff members from our church, offer training for them, share best advice for them for those 2 on-site intensives. And also during that, they're building relationships. Because that's one of the biggest things about our residency program is it's collaborative. So like this year, we've got 8 people in our residency program, and they're meeting every week together and sharing stories. And some of them are in the trenches of church planting right now. Some of them are kind of ahead of the game, and they're talking about, okay, this is what happened this week. We had this vision night, and 30 people showed up, and everyone's cheering for them. And then we're asking them the next week, okay, what's happening? And they're like, dude, this was the most discouraging week ever. Like this church, they were supporting us, and they backed out. And this family, we thought they were in, but they moved away. And all of a sudden, okay, now we're there to support, this church planter as they've gone through this really great week, and now they're feeling really kind of emotionally drained and just really sad and disappointed. And it is amazing how every year there's always something in every resident's life that we get to come alongside of one another and encourage each other through some tough seasons, especially when it comes to church planting. So we're there to support one another, encourage one another, share stories. But then we're also there, they're going to learn the ropes, we call it. They're going to research. They do a lot of research. They're going to research their area, do a lot of contextual research, say what's unique about our area and how is that going to shape the vision of our church. They're going to observe. They're going to observe our church at New Life. They're going to observe other church plants. They're going to hear from leaders from different networks and different churches all over the country. They're going to present. So pretty much every week, once we get into it, not only are they going to be reading and listening to different podcasts, they're going to actually present, okay, what's your strategy for making disciples at your church? And then we got a disciple making strategy template that they fill out. We got a marketing strategy. How are you going to get the word out about your church? And then they're sharing ideas of how they're going to share the good news of their church and how they're going to foster conversations in their community, and they're sharing ideas. Oh, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. I'm going to steal that. And they're sharing ideas of how they're going to plant these churches and then share those resources. They're going to evaluate. They're going to give each other feedback. It is awesome when someone comes with with a vision and they're like, yeah, but have you thought about that? That might not be the greatest idea because of this. Oh, right. I didn't think of that. I wasn't seeing that. And they're able to evaluate each other and kind of peer review all the work that they're doing, and then support them. So through our residency, we're we're trying to develop 5 C's. We're trying to help them develop their calling, really vet their calling. So a lot of church planters come in and they're really excited about it, and then they hear the war stories of church planters that come on the call and they're like, "Hey, this happened, this happened, this happened." And sometimes we've had church planters that have said, okay, this isn't for me. And they've wiped the white flag and they've gone on to other ministry. And I remember our first director, Pastor for Planning, he was like, that seems discouraging. And our lead pastor, Brett, was like, no, that's actually good. Like, we probably saved them and other people's a lot of hurt. The fact that they probably weren't called if they were going to wave the white flag after they heard a typical war story of church planting in the trenches. So really vet their calling, a little more time to vet their calling, develop their character. So we have a lot of sessions about church planter health and spiritual development, but even practical sessions like personal finances. And we help them develop, okay, hey, what are you doing in terms of your personal finances so you're not just always stressed about money? Because that's another landmine that Satan has taken advantage of church planters is their personal finances, and they're always stressed about it, and sometimes that's led them to make some unhealthy, unwise decisions. So we have sessions like that. We work on developing their competency. So skills like disciple making and evangelism. Hey, do you know how to share your story? Do you know how to train other people to share their story? Do you know how to cast vision for your church? So all the templates that we have them fill out, they're working on their competency. Chemistry, so their vision alignment. So they have clear vision. Oftentimes they come in and their vision is very fuzzy. Like, we want to start a church. But that's kind of like saying, okay, we want to start a Mexican restaurant. And it's like, well, what type of Mexican restaurant? Some people are coming in and like, I don't know. And some people are like, you say that to a group of people that you're like, hey, come with me and help me start this Mexican restaurant. Some people are hearing Taco Bell, right? And they're like, yeah, let's start this Taco Bell. And you're thinking, no, we want to start this like upscale Uncle Julio's, fancy Mexican restaurant. And then there's conflict because you don't have the same vision. And so through the process of clarifying their vision, they get vision very clear so that they can communicate that to the people on their team so they can all head in the same direction. So that takes time to develop that clear vision, and they do that during the residency program. And then, the 5th C is that collaborative friendships for life idea where they're texting each other during the residency, but even years after. I got a text from Kevin McNeil, a church planter from North Carolina this morning, and he's texting. He tells me he's always texting with Nick from St. George, sharing ideas years later. So they got friends in the trenches for years to come. So those are the 5 C's. So as Pat mentioned, if you know of maybe someone who's sensing the call to plant a church, A good next step for them would be come to a webinar that we're doing about church planting and what next steps we have for church planters. It's going to be on May 21st on Zoom. I think it's at 12 or 1. It's 12 or 1.
Whatever the website says.
Yeah, whatever the website says. It's middle of the afternoon, East Coast time. But that could be a next step for you if you know somebody. Also, another next step if you're interested in kind of learning more about the Renew movement that we're a part of. So we started Renew Movement, which is the church planting arm of renew.org. We're helping every church kind of not have an excuse. A lot of churches, they say, we don't know how to plant a church. We could never do it. And we're saying every church is kind of like one decision away from planting a church. And so we're trying to help churches, particularly in different regions, to be able to work together. So they say, like, maybe we have a little bit of money that we can contribute. Another church could say, maybe we've got a leader. Another church could, say we've got some equipment, right? We've got equipment. We can give equipment. We got people. We got some people that we can send. Developing those regional networks is one of the heartbeats of Renew Network. And we're going to have a meeting, kind of a informational meeting, an L5, in this next lunchtime period. So if you're interested in taking the next step and learning more about the Renew movement, we'd love to see you at L5. Bring your lunch into L5 at around noon. So that's all for me. We got a few more minutes for questions. So I want to open it up to you guys to see what questions you have. Interns, residencies, what do you got? Cool. So the question is the difference between the end goal for interns and residents. So Pat can go first.
Well, and I'll actually even answer for the church planting residency. The end goal is the resident leaves the program with a plan and strategy so that they can then, assuming they're ready and they've got the affirmation of their leadership, hit the ground running and start planting the church. Like they've got the plan. They don't have to sit and keep theorizing. They're ready to go.
Right.
Within the church, interns, they're just going back to school. So there's no specific, I guess the desired end state is that they leave better than we found them, more equipped for ministry. For residents, the unspoken one is we might want to hire this person. Like I really, every resident we bring on, I'm asking myself from the beginning, is this someone that we want to hire, that we want to keep on board? But still, it's now we feel confident that they have demonstrated over that year the ability to do the ministry that God's called them to do. My desired end state is to get a reference call from their other, the other church that's wanting to hire them, and I can say, yes, I have seen it, I have done it, which means during that residency, and same with internships, sometimes we have to have tough conversations. I'm not doing them any favors by saying, oh, we wouldn't hire them because of blank. If I don't tell them that, I'm not doing them any favors. So, the end state is that they are hireable, they are ready, demonstrated skills, behaviors, character. If you want to say calling, compatibility, chemistry and compatibility are the same. Character and competency. They've demonstrated the 4 C's we look for when we're hiring.
Yeah.
So I've heard internships, preparing them for ministry, but also just going back to school and residencies specifically for church planting. Is there something in between that you guys do, a residency that is ministry specific that isn't necessarily church planting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's where I was focusing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was like, I did a residency at New Life, I was just there to do a bunch of different things, and they were like, hey, you can serve here and serve here and serve here, and you can lead this. And that wasn't necessarily focused on church planting, but.
In that residency section that we were just discussing, is that primarily for college students? Is that for after college? Like, what is that particular residency?
Yeah,
program?
and you're talking the not church planting one.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the not church planting one, the residency is typically post-college because we want them to be here for so long.
Sure. And is that also a 9-month?
9 to 12, more or less. Will take longer, obviously, but usually by a year they're getting itchy to get a real job. So, Let me hit the guy in the back first.
So, and you may have said this and I missed it, I apologize, but it sounds like with the church planting residency, you want them, since they're all over the place, you want them connected with a church that's kind of going to be a sending church for them.
Yeah.
And a leadership that is going to be like a sending leadership. Is that?
Yeah, I didn't mention that, so thank you. Yeah. Every church, every resident that comes to us, it is a requirement that that they're embedded at a local church, and they're in leadership in some capacity. So sometimes it's an associate minister, like Jacob I mentioned. He's technically they're co-pastoring. They've been co-pastoring these two lead planners. They've been co-pastoring. Other residents, they're like Elisha. He's a church planting resident at 242. They just kind of like gave him the opportunity to start a small group, but he's got a full-time job somewhere else. And so he's kind of observing. They give him an opportunity to preach every once in a while. But they're embedded at a church in some capacity, that's saying we're behind this resident. We want to invest in them, kind of help them become a pastor. So we'll kind of train them in our DNA and help them get our DNA, give them opportunities to serve and to lead, and then kind of pastor planning. You train them in the nuts and bolts of church planting and help them get their plans and systems and processes and budgets and all that up and running.
So I know you guys have a tool online because I've used it, like the ramp up to planting. Here's what to do when. Do you guys have something similar like that for sending churches, or like guidelines? Kind of here's the ways you should be investing in this person as they're going through this.
Yeah, it's not as exhaustive of as a list as planter. Yeah. As he's talking about planter plan, which if you ever need a church planting software project management tool, that's what we created planter plan for, which is a schedule of here are everything you need to do between now and when you launch to help you keep on schedule. So planterplan.com if you're interested in that tool. And then we created a thing I just created called monthly checkpoints for the church planting that's the sending church to say, this is what we're learning about this month. And here are some questions, kind of some discussion questions to dialogue with the resident so they can share what they're learning and you can talk about that.
Do you have a website for that too?
The checkpoints? Yeah. No, that's just a PDF document. Yeah. So, yeah. But
How would we get that?
I can send it to you if you email me. Yeah, Sean. Yeah, Sean
That's
C.
a C,
Yeah. C. Sean C at church-planting.net. So yeah, and I can send you that checkpoint document. Yeah.
So I have two. One's quick. Is the intern coach full time?
Yes. I mean, there's no reason they couldn't be part time. Ours just happens to be a guy that's on staff full time.
Alright, so
And that's not his job.
Okay,
This is
gotcha.
other duty as assigned for him. This is a passion thing for him. And I guess I'll just repeat the question. Is the intern coach full time? And in our case, no.
What's their primary role?
It depends on when you ask, because he was our youth minister for a while. Now he's our online campus pastor.
Okay.
So yeah.
Kind of utility.
Yeah.
Utility.
Yeah.
The other question is your residency, your planning residency. It might be a bit exhaustive for a church that had somebody that they were saying, hey, we would like you to be our pastor at a satellite we're planting. But have you had that happen before, where it's a church saying, we want you to go through a program just to kind of get you equipped,
Right.
kind of help us figure out how to do it for our first satellite.
Right.
Is that something you guys would
Yeah, I mean,
come
like,
alongside with?
yeah. We definitely come alongside of like someone who is being trained, be equipped to be a campus pastor.
Yeah.
Especially if they needed to launch it. Like, there's a lot of what we do in our residency that's applicable to launching a campus.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've had one guy that's what they thought they were going to do, but then they were like, no, we need to release you, and you need to go plant an autonomous church. So we ended up planting an autonomous church, but
Cool.
yeah.
And is there like an application process to this residency, or
Yeah.
is it like a fee is what they pay, or how does that?
Yeah, for our residency program, there's an application that they'll fill out, and we've changed it up this year. So this coming year, it's a $500 application fee. It actually used to be over $4,000, but now it's only $500. And if you go through the residency program and you complete all the assignments and you show up, you do everything you're supposed to do, we'll give you there's an opportunity for a $5,000 grant. So we'd be investing in your church plant. So yeah.
For the internship coach, do you guys have like a kind of a guideline job description and kind of like a week by week over those 3 months, like here's kind of the touch points that he does, like outline?
Nothing written down. Okay. He just kind of does it and figures it out. And again, it's kind of a heart thing for him, and we want him to do that. And if he were to leave, we would find someone else to do the same thing because it's such a valuable element of their time with us. But feel free to email. I can connect you with him, and he can share some of the books he goes through and provide more details on that.
Would you say there's a good full-time staff equivalent to internship ratio, or like size of church to internship ratio? So as in, for example, a church of 800, you could take on up to 3 interns if you've got 12 staff or something. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
We've never had too many interns, and we've had as many as 5 at a time. It just allows us to do more outreach if we need to.
And what do you guys normally run on like a weekend?
Well, we're multiple locations. In our physical locations, we're running about 1,000 at the 2 physical locations combined.
Gotcha. I was just thinking of like what they could get into, because I mean a church of 80.
Correct.
Have 5 interns.
Could not have 5 interns.
There's
Right.
nothing to do. Go pick weeds. You know
Correct.
What I mean? So
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Any more questions? Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Email us L5 if you want to learn more about the Renew movement. And Pat, can you offer a word of prayer?
Love to. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for calling us here to this place at this gathering to learn and grow and seek you. God, I pray as we leave here, you will guide us specifically in this room as we lead people to become ministers and pastors of your church body. God, lead us. We need you. We can't do this on our own. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Life Theology Podcast. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and we hope to see you guys next week.